Hello and welcome. We're talking today in the reception room at the state capitol with Governor Perpich. Pleased to be able to meet with you again. I think it's been about a year and a half
That's right.
since we last sat here and
really
talked.
flies.
It does, doesn't it? Tempus fugit.
Yeah.
How has the last year and a half been for you?
Well, it's been very exciting and been a lot of hard work in the last year and a half. We've had some major problems, but in all, it's, I think, going well.
I remember the last time we talked, I went away after the interview and thought, that man must have an extremely high energy level to keep the schedule you do. And do you still feel you have a high energy level after another year in office?
Yeah, I think that what happens, the tempo keeps picking up, and soon it's, it comes with the job, literally. And
if you don't like the tempo, you better get out.
Get out, yeah.
My name is Mary Hanson. Welcome to Talk About. You're in for a treat today. My guest has been named by the George Gallup poll as one of the 10 most admired women in the United States, and she's had this honor for the past 6 years. She's a lecturer, she's a noted psychologist, and she's the author of 9 books, including a recent book called The Successful Woman. Talking about Dr. Joyce Brothers, and we're delighted you could join us today.
Thank you very much.
If you had to introduce yourself, Dr. Brothers, and could just say one thing about yourself, how would you intro yourself?
I'd say Joyce Brothers is a psychologist who tries very hard to help people.
Period, huh? Your motive for getting into psychology, we were just talking about this, is one that interests me. Can you just share that?
Well, you were telling me a little bit about why you went into broadcasting. Why don't you share that with the audience, and then I can add mine to yours.
We'll share our experiences here. I had the motivation of thinking that so many people I heard when I was doing social work needed to have a bigger audience, and I thought I can maybe help that happen by asking them questions, and I started a radio show years ago. And you said you had the same kind of motivation, huh?
Very much so. I, in essence, invented media psychology. It didn't exist before me. And I had the same feeling. Here's all this wonderful knowledge and information all locked up in a psychology library or a university library. And why not bring it to people who can use it to make their lives easier or smoother? And that's why I started the first of the radio shows that dealt with people's problems, and the first of the television shows. And I've been on the air in one form or another every day since 1958. And the motive was exactly yours, that is, to bring all this information to people.
Dr. June Osborne said that she hoped, as a national leader in the whole AIDS world, that our country would become more compassionate as we were touched more by the AIDS epidemic. I'm wondering if it has, and I want to ask both of you. Dr. Rain first, do you think as a country we
AIDS
are
brings
more
out
compassionate?
the best in some people, and it brings out the worst in others. I think in our state we've actually done very well. I think that the response of the families of people with AIDS, although there certainly are some very sad stories of rejection from family, by and large has been really good, and I think the state has responded well. There certainly are exceptions. I think we also confront a larger and more difficult problem in the urban areas and in the places like San Francisco where there is just so much AIDS that it's really hard, even when the response is very compassionate, to meet the needs.
What would you say as someone who's kind of been in the trenches, so to speak?
I was diagnosed in a rural area, and I've noticed a big change. I think there's pockets. It's where the education has been or is that there's a lot more compassion, a lot more understanding. And there are areas where people aren't quite as understanding and aren't quite as compassionate. I like to think of it as back in my childhood in the early 50s. My family was one Sunday afternoon going to visit a neighbor who was dying of cancer. And on the way over to the neighbors, my mother said, "Don't eat anything that they make in the house or you're going to get cancer. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. If it comes out of a bottle, it's okay, or out of the tap." And when my parents walked into that house, I knew that they were going to get cancer and were going to die on me. And that, I think that's where we are with AIDS and with the education.
What's been the hardest part for each of you about being in the 40s at this point?
Well, that age-old battle with weight. And also, I think having to come to grips with the fact that I physically cannot do what I used to do. I mean, I enjoyed basketball, and I find basketball is now dangerous, having suffered a knee injury. Skiing is not like it used to be. Running, all the things that I really used to enjoy. To me, that's the most difficult part about you know, changing what I can do physically.
Have you shifted, Peggy, to doing what we might call gentler sports? Or have
Walking.
Okay.
Although I have rollerblades. and it's really ugly, but I do go out there in the morning when there are very few people on the lake. That's when you can find me, a very dangerous looking individual rollerblading around the lake. That's me.
So the physical limitations and losses really too.
Right. And then I have to say, loss of parents, very, very difficult. You can prepare for it, you know it's coming, but it's still very hard when it happens.
That shows a match, doesn't it, with the job and with you, the man.
I can't imagine anything that would fit me better. I can't imagine anything that would fit my background, my skills, my interests, my desire to serve.
And this is something that you kind of intuitively, from what I've read, Alan, sensed years ago.
So
You wanted to be a judge way before you got to be a judge, right?
I did reach that conclusion before I got to be a judge, but that's what motivated me to want to become a judge.
And you knew somehow that end of the continuum was a fit.
Well, I've always had an interest in public service. I have always had a sense that it is important to be a part of something that ensures fairness. The judiciary is a natural place for that to occur.
So key value for you, fairness.
Fairness. Some would say I have an overdeveloped sense of it.
Well, I'm glad you do. I am glad you do. I want to talk just a little bit with you about the trip that you endured on the ship getting over to Japan. It was in a cargo hold. Just describe it for us, because it's unbelievably
It's
terrible.
indescribable to it. It was terrible. Well, we got aboard the thing. They just crammed us into holds. Again, I was fortunate. The hold in the forward hold and the rear hold had a lot. There was 1,600 of us, and I think there was 300 or 400 in the hold I was in. But the other two were just jam packed, and ours was too. But we had an opening, and we were getting some air. The other ones went berserk, and they were cutting throats, sucking blood. They went.
So they were killing other soldiers to get the blood
Yeah.
because they were so
Yeah.
desperate and so thirsty.
Yeah.
And you said you were packed in like sardines.
Yeah, just it was terrible. They
And
went
so you
wild
couldn't
and
sit, you couldn't.
you couldn't hardly move.
And that was for how many days?
That was just the first 2 days.
Okay.
Because we got hit, the second day we got hit. American planes bombed us, and we
not knowing that you were
they
on
had-
the plane.
I'm sure they didn't know. Yeah. And
Or
went
on
up
the ship, I mean.
On the ship, yeah. And as we were going up, and we got hit, and we started to limp. The ship started was damaged, and they pulled into Subic Bay, and then we thought, well, this bombing is over, and they got it again the next day, and then it was sunk.
So your ship is going down,
Yeah.
you're in the cargo hold.
Well,
So what do you do? So you got out
We
of the
got out of
hold
there
with
then,
this
yeah,
rope ladder.
yeah.
And you told me you couldn't swim,
I
Harold.
couldn't swim,
So the
no.
ship is going down. It's a
Well,
big ship.
It was on its way down. Yeah, it was on fire, and I spotted a couple of canteens on the deck of the ship. There was a number of them on there, so I took some. I can't think of the name of the uniform we had. That was a fatigue, something with a
yeah.
belt, half belt, and I took it strap and screwed the cap on either side, and it was going to keep me buoyant. So I jumped in, and not being able to swim this forever, going down there and coming up.
Oh, I'm
But I
sure.
jumped close to a debris of the ship. So we paddled over there, and there was a fellow, I should know his name. He and I got aboard that thing, hang on that piece of debris, and paddled in to shore.
Hello and welcome. I'm delighted to introduce you tonight to my guest as part of our leadership series. I'm talking tonight with Anne Bancroft, who is a true leader in the field of women and athletic endeavors and exploration and expeditions. The first woman that we know about that's gone to both poles, and I'm sure the first woman. I don't know, we need to put in the known about.
I always feel more comfortable with that.
I know your literature does give you that elbow room. You went in 1986 with Will Steger to the North Pole, and you were the first woman to go on an unsupported trip up there. Your recent trek was aborted, which was so unfortunate, but tell us what you were going to do and tell us what happened.
Well, I was traveling with Lee Arneson. We've been ski partners since '98, I believe. We went across Antarctica together and have since done many, many other journeys. And our drive for this particular trip of going to the Arctic this year was really to take our audience of children, which we have millions of all over the world.
Via the internet.
Via the internet and some curriculum that we've developed with a college out in the Pacific Northwest to try and encourage young people really to the understanding of what's happening on this earth is something that Liev and I feel very strongly is a crisis. This year is the International Polar Year, so it felt like a poignant time to take our audience with us, rather than to sit back here and just lecture about it with various audiences and try and educate smaller numbers of people. We felt like the best way we know how to be teachers is to simply step out into those wild places, and particularly young people, but take them on that adventure and talk about the changes that we're experiencing. And as you said, particularly for me, who's spanned 21 years of the Arctic, and had such a great privilege of not only standing at the top of the world, but the bottom of the world, to show young people firsthand through the adventure what is taking place up on the ice, because it's happening more dramatically in the Arctic than it is in Minnesota or surrounding areas.
Hello and welcome. Tonight I'm talking with Senator Amy Klobuchar, the first Minnesota woman elected to the U.S. Senate. a rising star as described by the Washington Post, and one of the funniest new members in Congress. As many of you know her, she was the Hennepin County Attorney for 8 years prior to being elected senator. And I'm just delighted she could join us today for a talk about leadership and about your life. And I'd like to start out, Amy, and ask you how your expectations that you had about being a senator jive with the reality.
Well, Mary, first of all, it's great to be on your show again. I remember being on when I was county attorney, and I think everyone sees it through the years that lives in Minnesota. So thank you for doing this and having people on. In terms of my expectations, I have to say that I didn't really expect what I got into in terms of how much time I'd spend with the other senators. You know, I was used to running an organization, the county attorney's office. We had nearly 400 employees. And then I get to Washington, and the 100 of us are together a lot. And we talk on the phone all the time. When you call a senator, they almost always call you back within an hour or so. And so that was kind of a pleasant surprise, but something I didn't really expect. The other thing is that a lot of the senators are in a little different circumstance than I am. I'm one of the younger senators. I still remember the day my family and I drove up in our Saturn with our college dishes in the back seat and the shower curtain from 1985. And I went to my first fancy lunch in the Senate, and they had, you know, you're in the Lyndon Baines Johnson room, and they have this big picture of President Johnson on the wall, and they've got, you know, this nice little table of food. And I went over and I got a salad and a cup of soup, and I brought it back, and I'm ready to dive in. I've got all the senators around me, and Patty Murray, the senator from Washington State, ran around, grabbed my arm. She said, "Amy, you just took the entire bowl of Thousand Island dressing and you're about to eat it." And I said, "That's what we do in Minnesota. We eat the Thousand Island dressing." But you know, it was just a different environment to be in. But at the same time, I really went there because I'd seen how you can change government and get things done. And there's still a lot of work to be done in Washington, there's no doubt.
So you're saying that if we would put all our bets on chemical imbalance, that would mean that meds would be more important proportionately than perhaps they are in treatment.
That's right.
I want to go back just a minute to talk more, though, about cause before we talk more about treatment in this regard. Family history. If my dad was depressed, am I more likely to have depression? What is the genetic connection?
There is a factor in terms of one's heredity, where if there's a family history of depression, then it can manifest itself in the children of that parent. It isn't necessarily the case. You have the potential for a manifestation of depression, but so we'd say you have the genetic makeup. Will that manifest itself? It depends, because you never see genes, genetic genes in isolation. You see it in the context of the environment. So it may be that some member of that family might manifest a depressive or major depressive problem. On the other hand, others may not. So
very similar to if one was talking about heart disease or diabetes. Talk about what people can do to protect themselves that are just basic, logical ideas, but important.
Well, first of all, we have to deal with the antibiotic use. Today we use antibiotics as if, well, I may have a sore throat, I may have this, I want somebody to take care of it. The vast majority of antibiotic use. So quit pushing your doctor. Yeah, don't. I mean, the doctor needs to make a decision based on the real medical information. The second thing is we've got to get antibiotics out of agriculture in a way that they're used today. A sick animal should be treated, but we shouldn't be using antibiotics to keep animals from getting infected because of poor hygiene, for example, or crowding and so forth. We need to develop vaccines today that are effective so that we don't even get infected with these antibiotic-resistant strains. And again, there's not big markets for these right now, and so the investment's not there.
But the GAIN Act, I read, is a small positive thing on the horizon.
Right. Well, what we're looking at today is, part of it is trying to understand which of the infectious agents are most likely to be drug resistant and causes the problem. So rather than try to treat them, prevent them from happening. So one of the areas that is being looked at, and actually I'm part of another group called CIPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. And this is a group that includes the Wellcome Trust, the Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, and others, to try to develop vaccines that don't have immediate market potential, but they will down the road, but we can't wait until that happens. So we need to get them now so that we're ready to go when these things emerge.
Denali is really home to some of the most unstable and fierce weather that I've ever been in, because it's the mountain is actually right on the base of the Bering Sea and the Gulf of Alaska, and so
the winds can get up to what, 80 miles per hour?
Yeah,
sometimes?
the winds can get 80 miles an hour, and then in the winter months, not only does darkness come over the mountain, but also the jet stream drops down over the mountains, so the winds accelerate.
Ooh.
So the higher you go up in the mountain, the higher the wind speeds will be.
So I'm sure some of the people sitting at home right now are saying, so Lonnie, why did you want to do it in the winter? I mean, wouldn't it be good enough to do it in the summertime?
I think what helped me with Denali in winter is my background of being a polar explorer. So
You're not afraid of cold, are you?
Yeah, so the expeditions we did to the North Pole, the rounding of Greenland, the dog sledding across Canada's Northwest Passage, all of those expeditions had extreme cold or periods of darkness in there, and between that and incorporating techniques that I learned from the Polar Inuit people on staying warm, surviving, navigating, those kind of things, helped me on Denali.
So you weren't put off by the cold part of it?
No, I actually treated the climb like a polar expedition and not like a climb.
The clip you just saw was from one of, I think, the movies is going to be the biggest, most popular movies of the summer, Bull Durham, directed by a former second baseman in the minor leagues, Ron Shelton. It's his first crack at directing a feature film.
But not his first crack at writing. Ron Shelton has written a number of excellent films that probably maybe some of you haven't seen or maybe have caught on video. The Best of Times with Robin Williams and Kurt Russell, and Under Fire with Gene Hackman and Nick Nolte. He's an excellent screenwriter, and his talents as director and screenwriter really come into full play in Bull Durham.
This film has been described as an adult comedy. I think it is that. It's wonderfully funny. It's fast-paced. As you've heard by now, it's starring Kevin Costner, who comes back to help a young hotshot baseball player kind of fine-tune his stuff. And Kevin is an aging man who's peaked and is going down. So we have one man going down, the other going up. In the middle of all this is Susan Sarandon, who's playing probably the most ardent fan of this baseball team, the Durham Bulls. And every summer she picks one man to be her man, and she says she's very monogamous, but it's for the summer only.
Time out, Mary. A little bit of time out here. Okay. Susan Sarandon giving, I think, a real star-making performance. And we have watched her in the movies for years. I think last summer, everyone who went to the Witches of Eastwick wanted to see how Cher looked. And, you know, Jack Nicholson has just truckloads of fans who are willing to laugh at anything he does. But I think the big surprise of that was just how funny Susan Sarandon was. I think in some ways she stole the movie just because she was so shockingly funny. It's like, haven't we seen her in this, that, and the other thing? And now she's making us laugh. And I think it's great to see her in this major role because this might be the best performance she's ever given. It is so all-out sexy, all-out funny, all-out physical, and yet really a mental performance, a real introspective kind of performance.
She handles a southern accent with skill.
I'm just at a loss for words.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's great. We should probably just show you a clip, another clip here, and give you
move on to Susan again.
Feel.
Wishing well means smiles and giggles. We make you feel good today.
Wishing well will make you squiggle. We're glad you turned into play.
We got get-well cards and jokes and fun. Tic-tac-toe and concentration. Okay.
Let's see, I'll get the broom and then...
Oh, oh, no! Ow! Oh!
Are you okay, Parky?
I think so, yes. How about if I lead the way, Mary, okay?
Okay, but...
Okay, here.
Let's get the broom next.
Okay, I can take that.
Okay, got that, and then me.
Yeah, okay. Just come on down.
Here I come. Okay. Coming down, Parky. Here I come. Oh, Parky. Here I come, Parky. I made it. This has got to be the place. Oh, this has got to be the way to Porky's room, too. Oh, this bedroom. Oh, my. This is not an ordinary mess. This is a mess with a capital M.